Let me go ahead and do a voice switch for you guys, alright? I'm trying to catch up right now.
There we go. Voice switched. Lighting on. Today is ASMR Friday. I am Nabisuki, the Kitsune Gamer, and we are going to be reading the Warrior Cat series. We are going to be on chapter, I do believe, 11 through 15. And let me take a quick peek here and see how many pages that's going to be. Let's see. I saw the chapter 16. There's chapter 16. Okay, so it's from 143 to 192. So if we do the quick math for that, that's about 50 pages. That's actually going to be shorter than the previous stream, but that's okay. I only typically do 5 chapters each Friday, so I can keep my voice in a okay condition. So a little bit about the previous chapters is we had found the clan, and we had actually gotten the Wind Clan to come all the way back over, past the Stinky Road, and back into their own clan space. But the problem was that we also ran into the River Clan. The River Clan was not too happy about the idea of bringing the Wind Clan back because they wanted to hunt in their area. They had problems with humans showing up for the fishing in their river and were struggling. And the Shadow Clan had the problem of having trees and roads cut into their portion, and that's why they also wanted to have some rights into the Wind Clan's territory. So both of those plans were against them. And with the showing of Thunder Clan, seeing as they, helped them, and then the Wind Clan was taking them across the River Clan territory to get back to the Thunder Clan territory. Can I turn my mic down just a bit? Hang on a second. Is that better? I know I'm talking a little bit louder because I'm explaining it. But there, I turned it down like 0.05 decimals. That should be a little bit better, hopefully. If it has a problem, do let me know. But it shouldn't. Anyway, as I was saying, the Wind Clan had helped the Thunder Clan travel through the River Clan's territory, and since the River Clan saw that and had one of their warriors fall over the ridge into the river, the River Clan now thinks that the Wind Clan and the Thunder Clan are allies. The problem with that is the Wind Clan is severely malnourished, and so they're gonna have many difficulties, especially since they still have a traitor in their midst in Thunder Clan. So there's going to be a lot of surprises, quote unquote, in the next chapters. Thank you for checking in, Holland. Alright. Let's get into reading. Oh, got the tie. Okay. Well, that's a new one for now. You haven't really redeemed the tie recently. You mostly do the bow tie rather than the tie. Okay. Chapter 11. Another day of sunshine. Fireheart purred to Graystripe, feeling his flame-colored pelt glow in the weak morning sun. Thanks to the fine weather, he had visited Princess nearly every day recently, slipping away to see her between patrols, hunting, and training sessions. Now, he walked with his friend along the short trail to the sandy hollow where Cinderpaw Brackenpaw will be waiting. Let's hope it stays clear for the rest of Leafbear. Graystripe meowed. Fireheart knew how much his thick-coated friend hated the rain. When Graystripe's fur got wet, it clung to him and stayed damp long after Fireheart's shorter fur had dried off. The two warriors arrived at the edge of the hollow just as Cinderpaw pounced on a pile of frosty leaves, sending them flying in all directions. She leaped and twisted to catch one as it fluttered back to the ground. Fireheart and Graystripe glanced at each other, amused. At least Cinderpaw will be warmed up and ready for today's assignment, Graystripe observed. Brackenpaw jumped to his paws and looked up at his mentor, his eyes wide. Good morning, Graystripe, he meowed. What is today's assignment? A hunting mission, Graystripe told him. He padded down into the hollow, followed by Fireheart. Where? Mewed Cinderpaw, dashing towards them. What are we going to catch? We're going to Sunning Rocks, Fireheart replied, suddenly sharing her enthusiasm. And we'll catch whatever we can. I'd like to catch a vole, declared Cinderpaw. I've never tasted vole. I'm afraid everything we catch today goes straight back to the elders, Graystripe warned. But I'm sure if you asked one of them nicely, they'd be happy to share. Okay, mewed Cinderpaw. Which way is Sunning Rocks? She bounded up one side of the hollow and peered into the forest, her tail sticking straight up. This way, meowed Fireheart, leaping up the opposite side. Okay, Cinderpaw raced down the slope, across the hollow, and up to Fireheart's side, sending fallen leaves flying everywhere. Graystripe leaped up and caught one as it drifted past his nose. He pinned it to the ground with a purr of satisfaction and saw Brackenpaw staring at him. Never miss a chance to practice your hunting skills, Graystripe told him quickly. The four cats made their way along the familiar scented trails to the Sunning Rocks. The sun was above the trees by the time they emerged into open territory. Ahead of them, a slope of rock rose out of the soft earth, its smooth surface lined with cracks. The cats had to narrow their eyes as they looked at it. After the shade of the woods, the flat rock face reflected the sun with dazzling glare. This is Sunning Rocks, Fireheart announced, blinking. Come on. Murr. It feels nice, mewed Cinderpaw as she raced up the stone slope behind him. Fireheart realized she was right. The stone felt comfortably warm and smooth after the ice-cold forest floor. They rested at the top, where the far side fell away steeply to the forest. Fireheart listened for the gentle bubbling of the river that followed the RiverClan border, flowing down from the uplands. It touched the Sunning Rocks before turning to run deeper into RiverClan territory. He could barely hear it. Perhaps the water was low after the dry weather. Fireheart stretched out, enjoying the warmth of the rock beneath him and the soft heat of the sun on his pelt. He closed his eyes, feeling proud to be laying there, a place where generations of ThunderClan cats had come to warm themselves, and which they had battled hard to keep. Graystripe joined them. Come on, he meowed to the two apprentices. Make the most of the sun while it's here. There are enough cold, damp days ahead of us. The two apprentices lay down beside their mentors and purred as the warmth seeped into their fur. Is this where Redtail died? Asked Brackenpaw. Cinderpaw avenged his death by killing Oakheart? Cinderpaw piped up. Fireheart's fur prickled as he remembered Ravenpaw's account of the fight. That Redtail had been responsible for Oakheart's death, and then Tigerclaw had killed Redtail, the deputy of his own clan. Fireheart pushed away the disturbing thoughts and replied simply, "This is the place." The two apprentices fell silent and looked down the slope in awe. Suddenly, Fireheart heard a noise. He pricked his ears. "Hush," he hissed. "What can you hear?" The two apprentices strained their ears forwards. "I think I can hear some scrabbling," Brackenpaw whispered. "It might be a vole," murmured Graystripe. "Can you tell where it's coming from?" "Over there," mewed Cinderpaw, leaping to her paws. The scrabbling noise became more furious and then disappeared.
Looking to build a chatbot for your...
Oh man, I hate that. The one that I'm trying to use for stream is had an ad pop up, so I'm gonna switch it real quick. So give me a second. I'm going to fix that problem. I also need to make sure the sticky note's right there. Let's see. Let's make sure that we can actually find one without ads. Sometimes they have them, sometimes they don't. It's kind of crazy. That one's live, so perhaps it might be okay. Let's check. Is that better? That actually might be better if it stays off the ads. They don't tend to have ads when it's live. That's why I tend to look at the live ones. I was trying to do that one because it didn't have any markers, but it ended up having some anyway. So I'm gonna use this one. Maybe turn it down slightly. Let me know if it gets too loud. The scrabbling noise became more fierce and then disappeared. "I think I heard you," Fireheart remarked. Cinderpaw looked crestfallen. Brackenpaw purred with an amusement at his sister's clumsiness. "Never mind," meowed Graystripe. "Now you know it's better to creep up slowly, especially on voles. They're fast." Oh, thank you for the follow. Welcome in, Excluded Wolf. I hope you enjoy the story so far. This is book 2 of The Warriors, and we are currently on chapter 11. We are doing 5 chapters today. I do ASMR every Friday, and I do 5 chapters each time. It takes about 2 hours to 3 hours for me to complete that many chapters. So if you want to keep in mind, the other days that I stream are very chaotic. They do not use this voice. So only on Fridays I'm doing this normal ASMR. So if you'd like to come by again, this is my ASMR Friday. Thank you for showing up. Sit still and listen, Fireheart advised. Next time we hear something, work out where it is and then begin to move towards it very slowly. A mouse could probably hear even the rustling of your fur, so let him think it's just the wind blowing across the rock. The cats remained where they were, no one daring to move until they heard the scrabbling sound again. His ears pricked. Fireheart rose and crept forwards, placing each paw noiselessly in front of the other until he reached the edge of the small crack that ran across the rock face. He paused, The scrabbling noise continued. Fireheart lunged forwards and reached down into the crack with a forepaw. He scooped out a fat roll that had been hiding in the shadows and flung it onto the bright stone. It squealed as it landed, but the hard ground stunned it, and Fireheart finished it off quickly. "Wow," mewed Cinderpaw. "I want to do that." "Don't worry, you'll have plenty of chances. For now, let's get back to the forest," said Graystripe. "Aren't we going to catch anything else?" Cinderpaw protested. "Did you hear that vole squeal?" meowed Fireheart. Cinderpaw nodded. "Well, so did every other creature around here. The prey will be hiding for a while. I should have caught it and killed it before it can make a sound." Graystripe's whiskers twitched with amusement. "I wasn't going to say a word," he purred. Fireheart picked up the dead vole in his mouth, and together the cats headed down the slope and began to trek onwards through the forest. After the open warmth of sun and rocks, the woods seemed chilly. Even though Sunhigh was approaching, Fireheart smelled fresh markers at the RiverClan border. Beyond them, the ground sloped down to meet the river. Oh, you got woken up by two cats fighting outside, going around. I could do an angry cat sound, but it would probably be way too loud. The fun fact is I actually have that on my wheel spin. Every time my admin and like my main people who tend to like subscribe to me, I always end up spinning it, and one of them always fucking lands on the angry cat noises. And it's like in the most inconvenient times when I'm like playing Repo. So I'm just making random sounds, and these randoms are like, "What the fuck are you doing?" They always seem to fight right outside your door. Have you tried putting mint or lemon balm outside your door? Cats really hate the smell of that, and that would probably help deter them from fighting outside your door. I actually own a cat. I used to have more, but over time, you know, they get old, things happen. So I just currently have one cat. He has a condition, so he's kind of stuck inside now. But that's my suggestion if you're having troubles with fighting cats, is lemon balm or mint, and put that outside your door. The reason for that is that it's a very potent smell, and they will not like to hang around it. You used to have 3 cats, now you don't have any anymore. Oh. I'm thinking about once my current cat passes to get like a munchkin or like one of the really big cats, you know? And the reason why I can't get one now is because, again, he has a condition. I have recently learned about a month or so back that my cat had caught FIV from another cat, and what that is the feline immunovirus. It's essentially the cat form of HIV, if you know what that is. There is a little bit of a difference when it comes to cats, because they either call it leukemia or FIV, because it's literally the same exact thing. And that's what they just decided to call it. But it's highly contagious through saliva. So he got it from another cat biting him and him fighting with them. So now he's stuck inside, so he can't infect any other cats. Like, I'm doing my due diligence and everything else. I kind of wish that the person that had the infected cat had done their due diligence, but I don't know whose cat it was, because there's a lot of cats in my park around here. So I just make sure he's comfortable with the disease. He has problems with inflamed gums, so I tend to take his hard food and I water it down so it's really soft for him. And since I've started doing that, has had less problems when it comes to his mouth. So he's not like saying ow anymore. He got so skinny before I found out, and like he was skin and bones. I'm like, this is an emergency. I actually took him to the emergency vet, and the emergency vet didn't even tell me. I had to take him to the regular vet because he wasn't getting better, even though they pulled his teeth. They originally thought it was just a immune gum disease, but they did a test on him. I told the normal vet to do a test on him, and that's when I learned he had FIV, which made me really sad. Actually, believe it or not, me reading this cat series is a part of a donathon I had made. It was one of the goals because I was trying to raise some money for my cat. I haven't really paid off all of those, but I'm not in debt or anything with it because my parents helped me out, but I do have to eventually pay them back. My cat is just, it's my last one, you know? Oh, thanks for that hug. Anyway, let me get off this soppy story and get back to the book. And let me switch sides. Otherwise, I'm gonna end up craning my neck too much in one side, and it's gonna start making my neck stiff. A leaf fluttered down towards Brackenpaw. The young cat immediately leaped up and caught it between his paws. He landed, looking pleased with himself. Well done, called Graystripe. You have no trouble with voles. Brackenpaw looked doubly pleased. Nice catch, Brackenpaw. Cinderpaw mewed. She nudged her brother's shoulder with her nose before turning to stare down the wood slope. The river's quiet today, Fireheart mumbled through his mouthful of bowl. That's because it's frozen, mewed Cinderpaw excitedly. I can see it through the trees. Fireheart dropped the bowl. Frozen? Completely. He stared down the wooded slope. The river glittered at the bottom, frosty and still. Could Cinderpaw be right? Fireheart's paws tingled with excitement. He had never seen the river frozen before. Can we have a look? Asked Cinderpaw. Without waiting for an answer, she bounded past the scent markers. Fireheart's excitement turned to panic as he saw the small gray cat disappear into RiverClan territory. He couldn't call after her. He didn't want to alert any RiverClan patrols that might be in the area. But he had to get her back. He left the bowl where he dropped it and tore after her. Graystripe and Brackenpaw close behind him. They caught up with Cinderpaw at the edge of the river. It was almost totally frozen, apart from a narrow channel of dark water that flowed swiftly between two fringes of ice. Fireheart remembered Whiteclaw with a shudder. He was about to suggest they leave when he noticed Graystripe's ears were pricked. So there is going to be an ad in 2 minutes. Please remember to lower the volume because ASMR streams do tend to be rather quiet, so I do not want you guys to be spooked. Thank you. Water vole, the Grey Warrior hissed. Sure enough, a small vole was scampering along the ice near the bank. Fireheart glanced at Cinderpaw and Brackenpaw, afraid that they might try to catch this tiny piece of prey, but neither apprentice moved. Fireheart felt relieved for a moment, and then his heart lurched as Graystripe dashed out onto the ice at hunting speed. Come back, Fireheart hissed. It was too late. The ice beneath Graystripe's paws gave a terrifying crack and broke. With a startled yowl, Graystripe fell into the river. He paddled madly for a moment before disappearing into the cold, dark depths of the river. Brackenpaw stared in horror, and Cinderpaw gave a desperate mew. Fireheart didn't quiet her. He was frigid with fear, staring into the water after his friend. Was Graystripe trapped underneath the ice? Fireheart stepped onto the ice. It felt cold and slippery beneath his paws, impossible to run on. He jumped back onto the bank. Panic gripped him. Then a blaze of relief as a drenched gray head appeared in the water further along. But relief turned to alarm as Fireheart saw that Graystripe was being carried downriver, turning and bobbing in the freezing waters. His paws thrashed helplessly, all his instincts to swim thwarted by the fierce current. Fireheart bounded along the bank, forcing his way through the bracken, but Graystripe was swept further and further away. Suddenly, Fireheart heard a yell from the opposite bank and stopped. A slender silver tabby had leaped onto the ice further downstream. She padded lightly over the frozen sheet and slid into the river ahead of Graystripe. Amazed, Fireheart watched the she-cat swim strongly against the current, holding her position in the icy water with confident, churning paws. As Graystripe was swept past, the tabby grabbed a mouthful of her spur between her teeth. Since we are in ads now, I'm going to take a quick break so I can stretch and drink some tea so I can keep my voice going for the rest of the stream. I will be right back. I'm back. I drank some of my tea. See, that wasn't so, long. I even got back before the ads ended. Alright. Let's go ahead and continue. But to Fireheart's horror, Graystripe's weight pulled both cats under. He started running again, his eyes fixed on the river. Where are they? Then a silver striped head appeared in the rolling waters, pushing through the waves. The tabby was swimming against the current, dragging Graystripe with her. Fireheart could hardly believe such a slender cat could swim with such a weight. The tabby grabbed the ice on Fireheart's side of the river with herself out of the river. Graystripe hung limply in the water, twisting and turning as the current dragged at his fur, but the tabby kept a firm grip. Fireheart slid down on the bank, raced across the ice, and skidded to a hole beside her. Welcome back from the break, you guys. Without a word, he reached forward and took a hold of Graystripe in his teeth. Together, the two cats heaved his soaking body out of the water and dragged him to safety of the riverbank. Fireheart bent over his friend to see if he was breathing. He felt dizzy with relief as he saw Graystripe's slick gray flank rising and falling. Graystripe coughed and spluttered and spat out a mouthful of river water. Then he lay still. Graystripe, Fireheart meowed urgently. I'm okay, wheezed Graystripe. His mew was breathless but reassuring. Fireheart sighed and sat down. He looked closely at the silver tabby. She carried the scent of RiverClan on her. After seeing her swim, Fireheart wasn't surprised. The tabby returned his gaze coldly, shook herself and sat down, her sides heaving as she got her breath back. Hey, Yusna, welcome in. Water streamed from her glossy fur as if her pelt were made from duck feathers. Graystripe turned his head and looked at his rescuer. Thanks, he croaked. You idiot, she spat, flattening her ears. What are you doing in my territory? Drowning, replied Graystripe. The silver tabby flicked her ears, and Fireheart saw a glimmer of amusement in her eyes. Can't you drown yourself in your own territory? Graystripe's whiskers twitched. Ah, but who to rescue me there? He rasped. There was a tiny mew behind Fireheart. He turned to see Cinderpaw crouching by a clump of grass further up the bank. Where's Braggonpaw? He asked. Just coming, answered Cinderpaw, pointing with her nose. Her brother was creeping nervously along the bank towards them. Fireheart sighed and turned to his friend. Look, Graystripe, we've got to get out of here. I know. Graystripe pushed himself to his paws and turned to the silver tabby. Thanks again. She dipped her head graciously, but hissed. Hurry, go now. She looked over her shoulder. If my father knew I'd rescued Sorry, I got something in my eye. I think I got it. If my father knew I'd rescued a ThunderClan intruder, he'd shred me for a kit wedding. Why'd you save me then? Teased Graystripe. The tabby looked away. Instinct. I couldn't watch any cat drown. Now go away. Fireheart stood up. Thanks. I'd have missed this furball if he'd drowned. He nudged Graystripe. His friend hadn't even shaken the icy water from his fur, and it was soaked to the skin. Come on, let's get back to camp. You're freezing. Okay, I'm coming, Graystripe meowed. But before he followed Fireheart up the slope, he turned back to the silver she cat. What's your name? Mine's Graystripe. Silverstream, she replied, and bounded away, back onto the ice and over the channel of the water to the far side. Fireheart and Graystripe led their apprentices through the bracken towards the border. Fireheart couldn't help noticing that Graystripe looked back over his shoulder more than once. Cinderpaw noticed it too. The little gray cat glanced up, mischief dancing in her eyes. What a pretty RiverClan cat she was. Graystripe gave her a playful cuff around the ear, and she ran on ahead. Stay with us, Fireheart warned in a loud hiss. They were still in RiverClan territory. He flashed Cinderpaw an angry look as she stopped and waited for them. If it weren't for her, they wouldn't be here at all, and Graystripe wouldn't have nearly drowned. He looked at his wet friend. Even though the Grey Warrior had shaken as much of the water from his fur as he could, his coat was still dripping and ice was beginning to form on the ends of his whiskers. Fireheart quickened the pace. "Are you okay?" he asked Graystripe. "Fine," replied Graystripe through chattering teeth. "Sorry," mewed Cinderpaw softly as she fell into a step behind Fireheart. He sighed. "It's not your fault." He felt weighted down with worry. How were they going to explain this to the clan? No fresh kill for their elders. There wasn't time to go back for the goal now. And a soaked Graystripe. Fireheart shuddered as he thought how close he had come to losing his closest friend. Thank StarClan that Silverstream had been there to save him. The stream near the training hollow was still running with water. Brackenpaw meowed thoughtfully from the back. "What?" asked Fireheart, puzzled out of his gloomy thoughts. "The clan will probably assume that Graystripe fell in there," continued the younger princess. "You could say he was showing us how to catch fish," Cinderpaw added. "I'm not sure any cat would believe Graystripe. If he'd get his paws wet on purpose in this weather," Fireheart pointed out. "Well, I don't want the rest of the clan to know I had to be rescued by a RiverClan cat," meowed Graystripe with a flash of his old spirit. "And we can't let them know we were in RiverClan's territory again." Fireheart nodded. "Come on," he meowed. "Let's run the rest of the way. It will help Graystripe warm up." Thank you for the hydrate. I'm gonna actually drink tea with that. So, the tea that I'm drinking is the Arizona green tea, but it also has honey in it. So it's very useful, especially for long bouts of speaking like this. Yeah. I don't know if you knew that, but yeah, the green tea has the honey and the ginseng in it. So it actually is very soothing to the throat. Having that layer of honey on your throat helps a lot too. You didn't know that the green tea had honey, or that honey helps your throat? The cats raced across the RiverClan border and past the Sunning Rocks. As the sun began to dip behind the treetops, they arrived back outside the camp. Oh yeah, the Arizona green teas are relatively cheap. That's why I get them. I also only drink cold beverages, so having the green tea pre-made is pretty nice for me. And yeah, there's actually a couple other things that will help your throat. So if you have a cold, there's actually a remedy with hot water, whiskey, and honey. So you water down the whiskey and you put honey in it and hot water, and that will actually help your sinuses if you have a cold. You probably didn't know that either. Graystripe's fur had dried a little, but frozen droplets hung on his whiskers and tail. Fireheart led the way through the gorse entrance. His heart sank when he saw Tigerclaw sitting in the clearing watching them. The deputy fixed his sharp eyes on Fireheart. "No fresh kill?" he growled. "I thought you were meant to be teaching these two how to hunt today." "You look half drowned, Graystripe. You must have fallen into a river to get that wet." His nostrils flared and he drew himself up to his full height. "Don't tell me you've been to RiverClan territory again." That's the end of chapter 11. gonna switch sides again as we start chapter 12. Oh, hi Husky. How you doing, Husky? You babbable Husky. I bet you're still streaming, aren't you? Hold up. It says you're live, but that looks like the screen of screen that you're usually not live. That's interesting. You're not streaming anymore. Of course. Okay, let me click off of that. Oh. Arc rated into Billy. Okay, well, let me refresh the page on that one. That'll probably help Billy out. There we go. Anyway, welcome in, Husky, you babbable Husky. I was just explaining to a newcomer the effects of honey and whiskey, because you can actually make a hot toddy, and that is what it is technically called when you combine hot water, whiskey, and honey. And it is a home remedy for your sinuses when you have a cold. It soothes your throat, and it also clears your sinuses. It's not meant to be an alcoholic beverage, even though it has the whiskey in it. It's meant to clear your sinuses. Alright, chapter 12. Fireheart lifted his head, about to speak, but Cinderpaw beat him to it. It's my fault, Tiger Claw. She stared boldly up at the great tabby. We were hunting on the frozen stream by the training hollow. On the bend by the deep pool, even that bit was frozen. I slipped and Graystripe came to help me, but the ice wasn't thick enough for him, and it cracked and he fell into the water. Tiger Claw looked into her clear, bright eyes as she added, "It really is deep there." Fireheart had to pull him out. Fireheart cringed, remembering how he had stood motionless with terror at the sight of Graystripe disappearing into the river. Tiger Claw nodded and looked at Graystripe. "You better get yourself to Yellowfang before you freeze to death." The ThunderClan deputy stood up and stalked away, and Fireheart breathed a sigh of relief. Graystripe didn't hesitate. The long road home hadn't stopped his teeth from chattering. He bounded away to Yellowfang's den. Brackenpaw glanced at Cinderpaw and padded off to his nest, his tail drooping with exhaustion. Fireheart looked at Cinderpaw. "Aren't you even a bit frightened by Tiger Claw?" he asked curiously. "Why should I be?" replied Cinderpaw. "He's a great warrior. I admire him." Of course, why shouldn't she? Fireheart thought. "You lie very well," he growled sternly, trying his best to act like a mentor. "Well, I try not to," mused Cinderpaw. "I just thought the truth wouldn't be very helpful here." Fireheart had to admit she had a point. He shook his head slowly. "Go and get warm." "Yes, Fireheart." Cinderpaw dipped her head and charged after Brackenpaw. Fireheart padded over to the warrior's den. He was worried at how easily the story about Graystripe's soaking had tumbled from Cinderpaw's mouth. But he also believed she was a well-meaning and honest cat. Oh my. Okay, have a good sleep. If you have any difficulties with your stomach, you could actually try to eat some bread and also have some ginger ale. That should help settle your stomach. He thought of Ravenpaw, another good cat. Had the story he told about Tiger Claw killing Redtail simply just been that? A story that tumbled from his mouth in the heat of the moment? Fireheart shook the thought away. Ravenpaw had been terrified when he spoke to Fireheart. He obviously believed his own story. Why else would he have been frightened enough to leave the clan? Fireheart chose a few pieces of fresh kill and carried them over to the Nettle settled himself beside it, he had to gnaw thoughtfully on a mouse. Of course, no problem. When I was younger, I wanted to become a nurse, but I can't deal with people like showing me their the tips of their fingers cut off. It's like, bro, stop that. But I have a lot of knowledge since my mom has MS, my dad has Parkinson's, my sister has something like lupus, along with like everyone having like mental disorders like ADHD, OCD, and everything else. And then a lot of home remedies and stuff that I've done myself over the years. I've had to deal with an upset stomach a lot because I have had a tight esophagus for a long time, so I have the inability to burp. So I know how it feels to have an upset stomach a lot of the time from either gas or like eating wrong food. Have a good night. The admiration in Cinderpaw's voice when she had spoken of Tigerclaw worried him. It seemed as though he alone suspected there was more to the ThunderClan deputy than met the eye. Bluestar's attitude toward Tigerclaw certainly hadn't changed. She had been treating him with the same trust and respect that she had always shown him. With a flash of frustration, Fireheart ripped another mouthful from his meal. Yeah, and they work. They work. That's the important part. Ginger ale has properties that will help your stomach settle, and so does bread. Bread will soak up a lot of the acids, and then ginger ale will actually make it to where your stomach, like the acid reflux, kind of stops. Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm keeping you awake. I'm giving you too much information. A loud sneeze made him look up. Graystripe was heading towards him. "How are you?" Fireheart asked as Graystripe arrived, smelling of one of Yellowfang's herbal concoctions. Graystripe sat down heavily and coughed. If you don't have that though, don't worry about it. If you have any, I guess if you also have some mint, that could be a great subsidiary for the ginger ale. Like either or. Mint helps settle your stomach as well when you have an upset stomach. "I've saved you some food," Fireheart meowed, pushing a plump thrush in a bowl towards his friend. "Yellowfang says I have to stay in the camp. She says I have a chill," Graystripe meowed thickly. "I'm not surprised. What did she dose you with?" Feverfew and lavender, Graystripe lay down and began to nibble at the thrush. "This'll be enough for me," he mumbled. "I'm not very hungry." Or maybe try some of that before you go to bed. It should help. Fireheart looked at his friend in amazement. That wasn't something he had ever thought he'd hear Graystripe say. "You sure?" he asked. "There's plenty here." Graystripe stared down at the thrush and didn't reply. "Are you sure?" Fireheart repeated. "What?" Graystripe turned his faraway gaze on Fireheart. Yeah," he meowed. "You must have a fever," Fireheart decided, shaking his head. "Oh well, at least he's still here, thanks to that Riverclare cat." A few days later, Fireheart woke to find the first fog of Leafbear filling the den. When he crept outside, he could barely see the other side of the clearing. He heard paw steps hurrying towards him, and Mousefur peered out of the gloom. "Tigerclaw wants to see you," she meowed. "Right. Thanks," answered Fireheart. Alarm shot through him. He'd slipped away to visit Greystripe's voice wheezed behind him. He sat down beside Fireheart, sneezed, and yawned. Tiger Claw wants to see me. Fireheart looked at his friend. You should be asleep. He was beginning to worry about Greystripe. He ought to have recovered by now. Did you rest up yesterday? He asked. As much as I could between coughing and sneezing, complained Greystripe. Then why weren't you in your nest when I got back from... Fireheart hesitated, remembering he'd spent the afternoon talking with Princess. Training. Do you think I get any peace and quiet in there? Greystripe flicked his head back at the den. Warriors trooping in and out all day. I found somewhere quieter, that's all. Fireheart was about to ask where, but Greystripe spoke first. I wonder what Tiger Claw wants. Fireheart's paws prickled. I'd better go find out. He could just see the shapes of Tiger Claw and Whitestorm through the mist, sitting below the high rock. As Fireheart padded over to them, they stopped talking and Tiger Claw turned to him. It's time Cinderpaw and Brackenpaw were assessed, he growled. Already? Fireheart meowed in surprise. The apprentices had not been training long. Bluestar wants to see how their training is progressing, especially with Greystripe being too ill to train Brackenpaw. If Brackenpaw is falling behind, she needs to know so she can appoint another mentor for him. Fireheart's tail twitched in annoyance. Surely Greystripe would have recovered soon. It would be unfair to entrust his first apprentice to someone else. I've been taking Brackenpaw out with me and Cinderpaw every day, he meowed quickly. Tiger Claw glanced at Whitestorm and nodded. Yes, but this is your first time as a mentor. It's a lot for you to take on, and ThunderClan needs well-trained warriors. I know, and I'm just a kitty pet, not a clan-born warrior, Fireheart thought bitterly. He looked down at his paws, stinging with resentment. No one had asked him to take on Brackenpaw, and he'd been putting in a lot of effort with both apprentices. Tiger Claw went on. Send Brackenpaw and Cinderpaw on a hunting mission through Tall Pines, as far as the Two Lake Place. Keep an eye on them, watch them hunt, and report to me. I'll be interested to see how much fresh kill they add to the pile. Whitestorm added, if Cinderpaw's skills match her enthusiasm, there should be plenty to eat tonight. I hear she is a keen apprentice. Yes, she is, Fireheart agreed, though he was barely listening. Tiger Claw's words had set his heart racing. Why was Tiger Claw sending him to the Two Lake Place again? His own hunting assessment had been held over exactly the same route, and Tiger Claw had seen him sharing words with an old kitty pet friend. He reported it to Bluestar, and she had questioned Fireheart's loyalty to the clan. Fireheart felt the fur along his spine begin to prickle. Was this Tiger Claw's way of warning him he had been spotted talking to Princess? Fireheart twisted his head and gave his back a quick lick, brushing his bristling hairs flat with his tongue. He sat up straight again and calmly suggested the Sunning Rocks would be equally good a place to test their skills. The sun there might have burned away some of the mist, too. No, growled Tiger Claw. The Dawn Patrol reported scenting RiverClan at Sunning Rocks. They may have started hunting there again. Anger flared in his eyes and his lip curled to reveal sharp teeth. They would need to be warned off before we do training there. For now, Tall Pines would be much safer for the assessment. Whitestorm nodded in agreement, while Fireheart's ears twitched uncomfortably at this news. RiverClan at Sunning Rocks? It was lucky they hadn't been spotted by enemy patrols when Greystripe fell into the river. As for the fog, Tiger Claw continued smoothly. Hunting in difficult conditions will make the test more interesting. Yes, Tiger Claw, meowed Fireheart, ducking his head respectfully to the two warriors. I'll tell Cinderpaw and Brackenpaw will get started right away. There is going to be an ad in a minute, so please make sure to turn down the volume if you have not already. Other than that, I'm going to go ahead and continue the story. Thank you. When Fireheart explained the assessment to the apprentices, Cinderpaw flicked up her tail and ran in an excited circle. An assessment? You think we're ready? Of course, Fireheart meowed, hiding his doubts. He'd been working hard and learning quickly. But won't the fog make hunting difficult? Asked Brackenpaw. There are advantages to the stillness of the air, Fireheart replied. Brackenpaw looked thoughtful, then his eyes began to shine and he mewed. It'll be harder to sniff out prey, but it'll also make it harder for the prey to smell us. Exactly, Fireheart agreed. Shall we go now? Cinderpaw asked. As soon as you'd like, answered Fireheart. But take your time. It's not a race. His words were wasted on Cinderpaw, who was already charging toward the camp entrance. You've still got till sunset, he called after her. Brackenpaw glanced at Fireheart and turned to follow his sister with a small sigh. Fireheart tracked the two apprentices through the tall pines. The springy layer of pine needles under Paw felt strangely soft after the frozen ground and the rust of the forest. He followed Cinderpaw's trail until he could see her stalking eagerly through the forest. Then he picked up Brackenpaw's scent and followed that. The trails crossed here and there. Fireheart could smell where their princesses had run fast, where they had sat down, even where they had lingered together at one point. Before long, Fireheart found a spot where Cinderpaw had made a kill. She had taken it with her. As he followed her trail, he could smell the scent of her catch mingling with her own. And he discovered where Brackenpaw had caught a thrush. The feathers were scattered everywhere. The apprentices were hunting well. Fireheart knew this for sure when he detected a scent thick with fresh kill. He dug down among the needles at the roots of the pine. There was a stash of prey hidden underneath it, left by Cinderpaw to pick up later. Fireheart felt a small glow of pride at her work. She had caught plenty, and now she was heading for the oak woods behind the two-leg place. Fireheart followed, just beyond the edge of the pine forest. He picked up Brackenpaw's scent. It was strong, which meant the apprentice was nearby. Fireheart crept forwards and peered around the young oak. The apprentice was crouching beneath a tangle of brambles, well disguised among its shadows. Fireheart could just see his tail moving as it twitched from side to side. I'm going to take a second and drink some tea. Brackenpaw had his eyes fixed on a wood mouse that was scrambling around the roots of a tree. Brackenpaw was taking his time. Good, thought Fireheart. He watched Brackenpaw draw himself forwards one step at a time. The leaves beneath his paws hardly made a sound. He was as quiet as the mouse itself, which continued to hunt for food. Suspecting nothing, Fireheart watched breathlessly, remembering his first hunting mission. Brackenpaw closed in. The soft rest of his paws on the leaves melted into the background sounds of the forest. Welcome back, everyone, from the ad break. Fireheart found himself willing the apprentice on. Brackenpaw was only a rabbit length away from the mouse now, his body pressed flat against the forest floor. The mouse scampered onto a root and looked around. It froze. Something was wrong. Now, thought Fireheart. Brackenpaw sprang and landed on the mouse, grasping it in his front paws. The mouse didn't have time to struggle. It was over in a single bite. Brackenpaw raised his head. Fireheart saw the satisfied expression on the young cat's face as he breathed the scent of his fresh kill. Then Brackenpaw darted away between the trees. Fireheart realized he was looking forwards to reporting back to Tigerclaw about his apprentices. Hi, the small voice behind him made Fireheart jump into the air. He spun around. How are we doing? Asked Cinderpaw, looking up at him with her head to one side. You're not meant to ask that, Fireheart spat, and licked his ruffled fur. You're not supposed to speak to me at all. I'm assessing you, remember? Oh, read Cinderpaw. Sorry. Fireheart sighed. He'd never have dared to approach Tigerclaw during his own assessment. He didn't want to scare Cinderpaw into obedience, as Tigerclaw had done with Ravenpaw. But he wouldn't mind a little respect every now and then. Sometimes he didn't feel like Cinderpaw's mentor at all. Cinderpaw looked at the ground for a moment, then glanced up at him. A puzzled expression on her face. Were you really born over there, in the two-legged place? The question caught Fireheart off guard. He glanced nervously in the direction of the two-leg fence, praying the strange sense of Cinderpaw and Brackenpaw would keep Princess inside her own garden today. Why do you ask? He mewed stolid. Tigerclaw mentioned it, that's all, answered Cinderpaw. She seemed genuinely curious, but Fireheart felt a dark quiver of menace at the mention of Tigerclaw's name. What else had Tigerclaw been telling Cinderpaw about him? I was born a kitty pet, Fireheart meowed firmly, but I'm a warrior now. My life is with the clan. My old life wasn't bad, but it's over and I'm glad. Oh, okay, mewed Cinderpaw, sounding unconcerned. See you later. She spun around and charged off into the trees. Fireheart stood alone in the woods, his heart thudding as he stared at the two-leg fence. A moon ago, his words to Cinderpaw about being glad his old life was over would have been utterly true. Now he was not so sure. His fur tingled with the knowledge that some of his happiest moments recently had been spent sharing memories with his gentle kitty pet sister. That was the end of chapter 12. After I drink some more tea, we will move on to chapter 15. As the sun sank into the forest, Fireheart waited beside the pine tree where Cinderpaw had buried her first lot of fresh kill. He heard paw steps and turned to see Cinderpaw and Brackenpaw padding towards him. Prey dangled from their mouths. Brackenpaw could hardly hold his catch. It was so big, Fireheart felt a surge of relief. Even Tiger Claw couldn't criticize the apprentice's efforts. I'll help carry this lot back, Fireheart offered, flicking away the covered pine needles from Cinderpaw's stash. He dug it up, grasped the fresh kill between his teeth, and set off back to the camp. When they arrived in the camp clearing, some of the clan cats were already taking their share of fresh kill from the pile. Tiger Claw must have been looking out for their return, because he padded over to them as they dropped their catch near the rest. They caught all this themselves, he asked, nudging the pile with a massive paw. Oh yes, Fireheart replied. Good, meowed Tiger Claw. Come and join me and Blue Star. Bring some fresh kill for yourself. We're already eating. Cinderpaw and Brackenpaw looked at Fireheart with admiring stares. It was a privilege to eat with the clan leader and deputy. Fireheart didn't share their excitement. He'd hoped he would report to Blue Star alone. The last cat he wanted to share his meal with was Tiger Claw. By the way, have you seen Graystripe? Asked Tiger Claw. Fireheart felt a pang of concern as Tiger Claw continued. He's supposed to stay in camp while he has a cold, but I haven't seen him since Sun High. Fireheart shifted his paws. Had Graystripe gone off looking for peace and quiet again? No, he admitted. Perhaps he's with Yellowfang? Perhaps, echoed Tiger Claw, and padded away to where Blue Star was gnawing a fat pigeon. Fireheart followed, trying to push away his growing worry about Graystripe's disappearances. He selected a small chaffinch from the pile of fresh kill as he passed, and wished he'd chosen a wall. How was he going to give this report with a mouthful of feathers? Welcome, Fireheart, meowed Blue Star, as Fireheart sat down in front of her. He placed the chaffinch on the ground, but decided not to start eating. Tiger Claw tells me your apprentices caught plenty of prey. Blue Star's gaze was friendly. Tiger Claw, sitting up beside her, glared at him more critically, making Fireheart's tail twitch. Yes, they've never hunted in the mist before, but it didn't seem to put either of them off, Fireheart meowed. I watched Brackenpaw catch a wood mouse. His stalking was excellent. And what about Cinderpaw? Asked Blue Star. Fireheart noticed a steely glint appear in her eyes. Was she worried about Cinderpaw's abilities? Fireheart replied, her hunting skills are developing well. She has lots of enthusiasm, that's for sure, and she doesn't seem to be scared of anything. Aren't you worried that might make her reckless? Asked Blue Star. She's quick and inquisitive, which makes her a good learner. I think that will make up for her. Fireheart searched anxiously for the right word. Eagerness. Fireheart flicked her tail. Her eagerness, as you say, worries me. She meowed, flashing a glance at Tiger Claw. She will need to be careful and guidance in her training. Fireheart's spirits plummeted. Was Blue Star unhappy with his mentoring? Blue Star's eyes softened. She was always going to be a challenge, but she is clearly turning into a fine hunter. You have done good work with her, Fireheart. With both of them, in fact. Fireheart brightened immediately, and Blue Star went on. I've noticed how you've taken over Brackenpaw's training without being asked, and I want you to carry on mentoring them both for the time being. Tiger Claw turned his gaze away, but Fireheart didn't miss the anger that flashed in his eyes. Thank you, Blue Star, he meowed. I see your missing friend has returned, Tiger Claw growled without turning his head. Fireheart spun around to see Graystripe appearing from behind the nursery. He was probably just getting some peace and quiet, he suggested. He's still feverish, and it can't be easy stuck in the camp all day. Easy or not, he should be concentrating on getting better, meowed Tiger Claw. Leaf Bear is no time for sickness in the camp. Mousefur was coughing on patrol this morning. I just hope StarClan protects us from green cough this season. We lost 5 kits to it last year. Bluestar nodded her gray head solemnly. Let's pray this Leaf Bear isn't as long or as hard. It's never easy time for the clans. She looked wistful for a moment, then told Fireheart, take that chaffinch and share it with Graystripe. You'll want to know how his apprentice did in assessment. Yes, Bluestar. Thanks, meowed Fireheart. He picked up the chaffinch and bounded over to the nettle clump, where Graystripe had settled himself with a large wood mouse. Graystripe had eaten half of it by the time Fireheart arrived. Perhaps his cold was on the mend. As Fireheart dropped the chaffinch beside his friend, Graystripe sneezed. Cold no better? Asked Fireheart sympathetically. Nope, replied Graystripe with his mouth full. I guess I'll have to stay in the camp a while longer. Fireheart thought his friend sounded a lot more cheerful than he had before. But he didn't want to betray his growing suspicion that Graystripe was up to something. Dragonpaw did really well in his assessment today, he meowed. Really? Graystripe took another bite of mouse. That's good. Yeah, he's a great hunter. Fireheart started to eat his chaffinch. Graystripe, he meowed after a long silence. Have you been out of the camp the past few days? Graystripe stopped chewing. Why do you ask? Fireheart's tail twitched uncomfortably. Well, you weren't here when I got in from last night's patrol, and Tigerclaw said he hadn't seen you since sun high today. Tigerclaw? Graystripe sounded worried. I told him you were probably out looking for peace and quiet, or that you might be with Yellowfang. Fireheart meowed. He took another bite of chaffinch. Were you? He asked through the feathers. Suddenly desperate for Graystripe to say yes, to stop the suspicion that Graystripe might be keeping a secret from him. But Graystripe ignored Fireheart's query. Well, thanks for covering for me, he carried on chewing. Fireheart didn't ask any more questions, even though he was burning with curiosity. When Graystripe got to his paws and announced he was going to the den, Fireheart was still no wiser about what was on Graystripe's mind. Okay, he meowed. I think I'll stay here a bit longer. Graystripe gave him a brief nod and padded away. Fireheart rolled to his back for a long stretch, scratching the ground above his head with his claws. He lay on his back for a while thinking. From the smell of him, Graystripe had given himself a good wash very recently. Was he trying to hide some scent? Fireheart realized that Graystripe had pretty much admitted he had left the camp. But where could he have gone that he couldn't or wouldn't tell Fireheart? Suddenly his paws prickled. What about his own visits to Princess? In Two Lake territory, of all places. He'd washed himself thoroughly before returning to Camp 2, and never mentioned the meetings to Graystripe. Fireheart flipped over and sat up. There was something caught under one of his claws. He lifted his paw and tugged out the piece of dirt with his teeth. It was catkin, old and shriveled, but definitely a catkin. What was this thing doing here? Willow trees didn't grow in the ThunderClan's part of the forest. In fact, the only willows Fireheart had ever seen grew close to the river in RiverClan territory. Fireheart held his breath as his heart began to pound. Had this come from Graystripe's coat? He crept into the warrior's den. Graystripe was already asleep. Fireheart lay awake beside him and wondered if Graystripe had really been foolish enough to return to Riverclan territory. The look in Leopardfur's eyes after Whiteclaw's death had shown that there was a score to be settled. Fireheart shuttled. Okay, I'm gonna get some tea. My tongue's starting to catch. Fireheart shuddered as he resolved to find out exactly where Graystripe was going and why. When Fireheart woke, the den felt damp and chilled. One sniff of the air told him rain was on the way. He pushed his way outside, yawning. He hadn't slept well, worrying about Graystripe. Even now, he thought of his friend alone in Riverclan territory. It sent a shiver through him. Chilly, eh? Running Wind's voice startled Fireheart. Fireheart looked over his shoulder, his tail twitching. The lean tabby warrior was padding out of the den. Yeah, Fireheart agreed. Are you okay? Asked Running Wind. Not caught your friend cold, have you? Mousefur is streaming with it this morning, and Longtail said Swiftpaw sneezed all through training yesterday. Fireheart shook his head. I'm fine, just tired after yesterday's assessment. Ah, Bluestar thought you might be. That's why she's asked me to help you with Cinderpaw and Brackenpaw's training today. Is that okay with you? Yeah, thanks, Fireheart meowed. Right then, Running Wind decided. I'll meet you in the hollow after I've eaten. If Swiftpaw's coming down with a cold, we should have the place to ourselves. Are you hungry? Fireheart shook his head, and Running Wind trotted away to pick through the leftovers from last night's fresh kill. Fireheart went straight to the training hollow and waited for the others to arrive. His mind was not on the training. He was still thinking about Graystripe. He felt sure his friend would slip out of the camp again today. A rain-laden wind was beginning to sway the leafless branches above the hollow when Cinderpaw and Brackenpaw arrived, followed by Running Wind. What are we doing today? Asked Cinderpaw, scampering down into the hollow. Fireheart stared at her blankly. He hadn't thought about it at all. Hunting, Brackenpaw mewed hopefully as he trotted after Cinderpaw. Running Wind padded across the hollow and joined them. How about practicing some stalking techniques, he suggested. Good idea, Fireheart agreed quickly. Not the old rabbit hears you, mouse feels you lesson again, Cinderpaw moaned. Running Wind silenced her with a look and turned to Fireheart. Fireheart realized with a jump that Running Wind was waiting for him to start. I'll start by showing you the best way to stalk a rabbit, he stammered. He dropped into a crouch and began to move forwards, fast and light, until he reached the end of the hollow. He stood and turned to find the other three cats staring at him quizzically. Are you sure that'd fool a rabbit? Mewed Cinderpaw, her whiskers twitching. Fireheart felt confused for a moment, until he realized he just demonstrated his best bird stalking technique. A rabbit would have heard the swish of his fur through the undergrowth of 3 fox lengths away. Fireheart looked at Running Wind, embarrassed. The tabby warrior frowned. How about I show you two how to creep up on a shrew? Cinderpaw turned her bright gaze from Fireheart to Running Wind. Fireheart sighed and padded over to watch. By sun-high, Fireheart was still finding it difficult to concentrate on the training session. He kept imagining Graystripe sneaking out of the camp and longed to follow him. Eventually, his restlessness overwhelmed him. He went over to Running Wind and spoke quietly into his ears. "I have a belly ache," he meowed. "Can you take over the training for the rest of the day? I want to see if Yellowfin has anything for it." "I thought you seemed a little distracted," Running Wind replied. "You go back to the camp. I'll take this pair out hunting." "Thanks, Running Wind," meowed Fireheart, feeling a pang of shame that Running Wind had believed him so easily. He limped across the hollow, trying to look as if that he were in pain. As soon as he was safely among the trees, he broke into a run and raced back to the camp. When Graystripe had returned yesterday, he had appeared from behind the nursery. Fireheart knew from experience that this was the best place to slip through the camp boundary without being noticed. It was where Yellowfin had escaped from the camp when the clan had suspected the old medicine cat of Spotted-Leaf's murder. Fireheart padded around the outside of the camp and sniffed at the wall of the bracken. His heart sank as he picked up Graystripe's scent. Graystripe had definitely been sneaking out of camp this way, and often by the smell of it. At least the scent was stale, which meant he hadn't been this way today. Fireheart crouched behind a nearby tree and settled down to wait. The wood was growing darker as the rain clouds began to push across the sky. The shadows hid him perfectly, and he made sure he was downwind so Graystripe wouldn't detect him. His belly really was aching now, tense with guilt and apprehension. He half hoped that Graystripe wouldn't come, half hoped he would just lead him to some quiet spot within ThunderClan's borders. Fireheart lurched as he heard a rustling sound behind the bracken wall. A gray nose was pushing its way through the fronds. Fireheart ducked his head as Graystripe looked around cautiously. After a few moments, the warrior leaped out and set off at a trot towards the training hollow. Hope flared in Fireheart's chest. Perhaps Graystripe's cold was better, and he decided to join the training session. He set off after him, keeping a safe distance behind, relying on scent rather than sight to track his friend. There is going to be an ad in 3 minutes. Please remember to lower your volume if you have not already. Thank you very much. But when the trail veered away from the path that led to the training hollow, Fireheart knew that his hope had been in vain. With an ominous sense of dread, he saw the distinctive gray rock loom ahead through the trees. Sunning rocks. Fireheart pricked his ears and opened his mouth, testing the breeze for the smell of enemy cats. At the edge of the trees, he caught a glimpse of a broad-shouldered gray cat slipping past the rocks, towards the RiverClan border. There was no doubt now where Graystripe was heading. As soon as his friend was out of sight, Fireheart padded forwards, peered down the slope to the river. By the sway of the undergrowth, Fireheart could guess where Graystripe was. He just hoped there weren't any RiverClan warriors watching too. Fireheart made his way down through the fronds. The river wasn't frozen anymore. He could hear the water lapping at the bank and splashing over the boulders. He slowed his pace as he reached the edge of the bracken and peered out of the open shore. Graystripe was sitting on pebbles. The gray warrior was looking around, his ears pricked. Fireheart could tell from the relaxed slope of his shoulders that he wasn't listening for prey. A strange cat's call sounded in the distance. A River Clan patrol? Fireheart's fur prickled and his muscles instinctively tensed. But Graystripe didn't move. Then Fireheart heard a rustle in the bracken beyond the river. Still, Graystripe stayed there where he was. Fireheart held his breath as a face appeared on the far riverbank. With barely a sound, the silver cat, she-cat, emerged from the underground and slipped into the river. Fireheart felt his heart miss a beat. It was Silverstream, the she-cat who had rescued his friend. She swam easily across the river. Graystripe stood up and mewed with delight, kneading the pebbles with his paws in anticipation, holding his tail high. He padded to the edge of the water as she climbed onto the shore. Silverstream shook the drops from her fur, and two gray cats touched noses gently. Graystripe rubbed his muzzle along her jaw, and she lifted her chin happily. Then Silverstream stood on tiptoe and wound her slender body around his. For once, Graystripe didn't seem to mind getting wet at all, because he purred loud enough for Fireheart to hear as Silverstream pressed her damp fur against him. That is the end of chapter 13, and now that we are in the ad break, I'm going to take another quick break for myself to stretch and also to get some tea. I'm back. Chapter 14. Fireheart's hackles bristled with horror. How could Graystripe be so stupid? He was breaking every part of the warrior code by meeting this cat from another clan. Graystripe, Fireheart hissed as he sprang from the bushes. The two cats spun around to face him. Silverstream's ears flattened angrily. Graystripe just stared at him, startled. You followed me. Fireheart ignored his stunned meow. What are you doing? Don't you know how dangerous this is? Silverstream spoke up. It's okay. There won't be a patrol here until after sunset. You can be sure of that, can you? As if you know all your clan's movements, Fireheart growled. Silverstream lifted her chin. Actually, I do. My father is Crooked Star, the leader of RiverClan. Welcome back from the ad break, you guys. Fireheart froze. What are you playing at? He spat at Graystripe. Could you have chosen worse? Graystripe met Fireheart's eyes for an instant, and turned to Silverstream. I better go, he mewed. Silverstream blinked slowly and stretched her head forwards to touch his cheek. They closed their eyes and remained still for a moment. Fireheart watched, his paws prickling with alarm. Silverstream whispered something into Graystripe's ear, and the two cats stepped apart. The RiverClan she-cat raised her head and stared challengingly into Fireheart's eyes before slipping back into the river. Graystripe bounded over to Fireheart's side. The two friends didn't speak as they raced out of RiverClan territory and back past Sunning Rocks. As they approached the camp, Graystripe slowed his pace. Fireheart slowed too. They must stop seeing her, he panted. His panic had lessened now that they were well away from RiverClan border, but he was still angry. I can't, replied Graystripe hoarsely. He coughed, his sides heaving. They don't understand, Fireheart meowed. RiverClan is completely hostile to ThunderClan at the moment. You heard Leopardfur after Whiteclaw died. Fireheart winced, knowing that the reminder would be painful for his friend. But he couldn't stop now. How could he even trust this RiverClan cat? You don't know Silverstream, Graystripe spat back. He stopped and sat down, his eyes glazed with pain. And there's no need to remind me about Whiteclaw. You think it's easy knowing I'm responsible for the death of one of Silverstream's clanmates? Fireheart snorted impatiently. Whiteclaw was an enemy warrior, not a clanmate. But Graystripe went on. Silverstream understands it was an accident. The gorge was no place for a battle. Any cat would have fallen there. Fireheart paced around him as Graystripe began to lick the scent of Silverstream from his fur. It doesn't matter what Silverstream thinks. What about your loyalty to ThunderClan? He demanded. You're breaking the clan code by seeing her. Graystripe stopped washing. You think I don't know that? He hissed. Do you doubt my loyalty to ThunderClan? What else can I think? We can't see her without lying to the clan. And what if we have a battle with RiverClan? Have you thought about that? You worry too much, Graystripe snapped. It won't come to that. Now that Brokenstar's gone and WindClan is back, the clans will be at peace. RiverClan doesn't seem to be acting very peacefully, Fireheart pointed out. You know they've been hunting on Sunning Rocks in our territory. They've been hunting on Sunning Rocks since before I was kidded, scoffed Graystripe, twisting to wash the base of his tail. Fireheart carried on pacing. Graystripe didn't seem to understand what he was doing. Okay, what if RiverClan patrol catches you? Silverstream won't let that happen, answered Graystripe between long licks along his bushy tail. For StarClan's sake, aren't you even a little bit worried? Fireheart burst out, exasperated. Graystripe stopped washing and looked up at his friend. You don't get it, do you? StarClan must have planned this. Look, Silverstream wants to see me, even after what happened to White Claw. We share the same thoughts. It's as if we're born into the same clan. Fireheart realized it was pointless to argue anymore. Come on, he meowed heavily. You better get back before you're missed again. Graystripe got to his paws. Side by side, he and Fireheart walked to the top of the ravine and looked down at the camp. Over and over, one thought echoed in Fireheart's mind. How could Graystripe love Crooked Star's daughter, but remain loyal to ThunderClan? He glanced at Graystripe, and they began to climb down the steep slope home. They crept back into the camp the same way Graystripe had left it. Fireheart held his breath as he squeezed through the boundary wall, angry with Graystripe for making him sneak around like this. His heart sank as they rounded the nursery to find Whitestorm approaching them. Graystripe, you should be resting, not hanging around here. That cough of yours has already begun to spread. You don't want it getting into the nursery, warned the warrior. Oh, hello. Welcome in. I hope you're having a good evening. I am currently reading Warriors, and this is the second book, and I am currently on chapter 14. And I only do ASMR on Fridays. Any other day, you're going to get a lot of chaos and a lot of high-pitched screaming and screeching and cursing. But yeah, welcome in. Nice to meet you too. Thank you for popping in. Graystripe nodded and padded back towards the warrior's den. And you? Fireheart's ears flicked nervously as Whitestorm turned to him. Shouldn't you be training your apprentices? Yes, Warriors the Cat's book. Yeah, that series. I have the entire series. That's exactly what I'm reading right now. I came back to get something from Yellowfang for a bellyache, Fireheart mumbled. Well, go and get it then, replied Whitestorm. And once you have, you can make yourself useful and find some fresh kill. It's Leafbear. You can't have young warriors hanging around the camp doing nothing. Yes, Whitestorm meowed Fireheart. He turned away, relieved to escape questions, and ran toward Yellowfang's den. Yellowfang was busy mixing herbs. There were several heaps of leaves gathered in front of her. Fireheart stood and watched her for a moment without speaking. So, this book is book 2, which is Fire and Ice. He felt sad, drained after the row with Graystripe. He couldn't help wishing he was Spotted Leaf here mixing herbs instead of Yellowfang. Yellowfang glanced up at him. My supplies are running low. I might need help to restock. Fireheart didn't reply. He was just wondering if he could confide his worries about Graystripe when she interrupted his thoughts. It looks like there's White Claw in the camp, she growled, prodding impatiently at a dried leaf. 2 cases this morning. Swiftpaw asked Fireheart. The old medicine cat shook her head. Swiftpaw's just got a cold. It's Speckatail's kid, and Patchpelt. Not serious at the moment, but we need to concentrate on getting the clan strong. Leafbear always brings the threat of green cough. Fireheart understood her concern. Green cough was a killer. Yellowfang looked up again. What do you want? Oh, nothing. Just a bellyache. But it doesn't matter if you're busy. Bad? She meowed. No, Fireheart admitted, unable to meet her gaze. Then come back when it is. The medicine cat went back to her mixing. Fireheart turned to leave. but Yellowfang called him back. Make sure Graystripe stays in his den, will you? He's a strong young warrior. If he were resting, his cough would be better by now. Fireheart's tail twitched nervously. Had she guessed that Graystripe had been slipping out of camp? He waited, his heart thudding, in case she was going to say more. But Yellowfang was frowning at the herbs again. So he padded quietly away. It was getting dark, and Fireheart knew he had only a short time left for hunting. He quickly caught a shrew, a chaffinch, and a mouse, but hesitated before returning to camp. His fears for Graystripe felt more important than anything Whitestorm might say if he didn't add something to the fresh kill pile this time. Fireheart came to a decision. If Graystripe wouldn't listen to reason, maybe Silverstream would. He stashed his catch beneath a tree root and covered it with leaves. For the second time that day, he turned toward Sunning Rocks. The rain that had been threatening all day finally began to fall. It was drumming steadily on the bracken by the time Fireheart crept down the shadowy slope towards the river. Even in the rain, Silverstream's scent was easy to find. Fireheart followed the trail to a place where he had found Graystripe and Silverstream together. Hyper alert, he padded onto the shore. The dark water rushed past relentlessly, sending a shiver down Fireheart's spine. He had no desire to swim across. His fur did not have the oily protection from the water the pelts of the RiverClan cats had, and Leafbeard was no season to get a soaking. Suddenly, Fireheart froze. He smelled RiverClan warriors. He dropped to a crouch and looked across the river to see Silverstream pushing her way through the trailing branches of a willow. Behind her came two of her clan, one of them a warrior with massive shoulders and battle-torn ears. The warrior sniffed the air suspiciously and peered around. Fireheart heard the blood roaring in his ears. Had the warrior picked up his scent? That is the end of chapter 14. We will be moving on to chapter 15 and the final chapter of the stream. The next 5 chapters will be chapter 16 through 20, which will be next Friday. Chapter 15. The Fellowship of the Ring was made ale. This is not Lord of the Rings. This is not Lord of the Rings, okay? Very, very quietly, Fireheart backed into the bracken. The RiverClan warrior had stopped smelling the air, but he was still looking around. Fireheart turned, still crouching, and began to creep away. He heard a small splash behind him. A cat had slipped into the river. Ayo. Thank you for following. Please remember that I only do ASMR on Fridays. Every other day you're gonna see a lot more chaos. Fireheart glanced over his shoulder. Oh, thank you for stopping in. How dare you thank me? Well, say you're welcome, whatever. Same thing. I'll remember to show up on Friday. Yes. You're gonna get notifications on Monday, Thursday, and Saturday as well. But that's my normal streaming time, and that's like my other model in voice. And it's a lot more chaos than Friday. Fireheart glanced over his shoulder, his heart pounding. Through the bracken, he could see a silver head bobbing towards him. Silverstream. But where were the other 2 cats? He circled cautiously, tasting the air with an open mouth. No scent of them nearby. must have moved on. He looked back at Silverstream, swimming determinedly across the river. For a moment, Fireheart wondered if this was a trap. Wondered if he should run, but his concern about Graystripe made him stay. The silver tabby climbed onto the bank and hissed quietly. Fireheart, I know you're there. I can smell you. It's okay. Stonefur is Shadowpaw. Not Shadepaw. Me and my quick reading sometimes. Stonefur and Shadepaw have gone. Fireheart didn't move. Fireheart, I wouldn't let anything happen to Graystripe's closest friend. She sounded impatient. Believe me, for StarClan's sake. Fireheart crept slowly from his hiding place. Silverstream stared at him, her tail twitching. What are you doing here? I was looking for you, he whispered, painfully aware he was in enemy territory. Where Sun Katku appears to fight for Hisa. Okay, DBZ reference. I bet you have watched DBZ Abridged. Silverstream flicked her ears in alarm. Is Graystripe okay? Has his cough got worse? Fireheart was irritated by her concern. He didn't want to know how much of this she-cat cared for his best friend. He's fine, he growled. His caution swept away with anger. But he won't be if he carries on needing you. Silverstream whistled. I won't let anything bad happen to Graystripe. Oh, really? Fireheart snorted. And what could you do to protect him? I am a clan leader's daughter, meowed Silverstream. Does that give you the power to control your father's warriors? You're hardly more than an apprentice. Like you, she hissed indignantly. Yes, that's true, Fireheart admitted. And that's why I'm not sure I could protect Graystripe from the anger of his own clan or yours. If they find out you're seeing each other. Silverstream tried to glare at him, but her eyes were clouded with emotion. I can't stop seeing him, she meowed, her voice softened to a whisper. I love him. But the tension between our clans is bad enough already. Fireheart was too angry to feel any sympathy. We know RiverClan is hunting in our territory. The defiant gleam returned to Silverstream's eyes. If ThunderClan understood why, they wouldn't begrudge what we catch there. Why? Fireheart flashed back at her. Our clan is hungry. Our kids cry because their mothers have no milk. The elders are dying for the lack of decent prey. Fireheart stared, taken aback. But you got the river, he protested. Every cat knew that RiverClan enjoyed the best hunting of all. Fish from the river, as well as woodland prey in the fields beyond. It's not enough. Tuleis have taken over our territory downstream. They built a camp there, all greenleaf, and stayed as long as the fish were plentiful. By the time they went, the fishing was scarce. And the damage they'd done to the forest means that even woodland prey is harder to find. Fireheart felt a pang of pity in spite of his anger. He could guess how serious this must be for RiverClan. They were used to the rich diet of fish and grew fat on it in every green leaf so they could endure the harsh moons of Leaf Bear. He stared at the she-cat with new eyes. She wasn't slim, he realized. She was skinny. As her wet coat clung to her, he could see her ribs. Suddenly, he understood Cricket Star's hostility to Blue Star's plan at the gathering. That's why he didn't want WindClan to come home. Rabbits run on the moorlands all Greystripe, he mewed. No, answered Silverstream, lifting her chin. Her eyes flashed. How could our love do any harm? Fireheart returned her stare. Another shiver ran down his back as the cold vein seeped through his thick pelt. Suddenly, Silverstream hissed, making Fireheart jump. We must leave. The patrol's coming. Fireheart heard a faint whistle on the other side of the river. It would be pointless and dangerous to stay any longer. The rustling noise was growing closer. Without saying goodbye, he bounded back into the wet bracken and headed home. He raced back towards the stash of fresh kill he'd left beneath the oak tree. Halfway home, the scent of a fresh two-leg trail stopped him in his tracks, reminding him of Princess. He wondered if there was time to follow the trail back to the two-leg place. He wanted to know if she had been kitted yet. But Princess would probably be safely tucked up in her two-leg nest by now, and the clan needed fresh kill. With an uneasy twinge, Fireheart realized that Greystripe wasn't the only one divided loyalties. Rain began to drip from the end of his whiskers. He shook the drops away and bounded on towards his hoard of fresh kill. The camp was silent by the time he arrived, the cats sheltering in their dens. Fireheart crossed the muddy clearing and dropped his catch on the pile, taking a piece for himself. He trotted toward the warrior's den. There was no way he was eating outside tonight. He pushed his head inside. Greystripe was dozing, to Fireheart's relief. He might actually get better if he wasn't charging through the forest looking for Silverstream. Yellowfang hasn't taken any fresh kill yet. Whitestorm's meow sounded from the shadows. She's been too busy. I think she would appreciate that mouse you're carrying. Fireheart nodded and backed out again. If Yellowfang was too busy to fetch food, it must mean the sickness in the camp was getting worse. Fireheart raced across the clearing. Stopping only to pick up another mouse before hurrying through the fern tunnel. A tabby kit lay in a nest of moss in the bracken at the edge of the clearing. Yellowfang crouched beside it, trying to persuade it to eat some herbs. The kit snuffled pitifully, blinking up at her with streaming eyes and nose. Fireheart realized this must be the kit with white cough. Yellowfang turned when she heard Fireheart arrive. Is that from me? She meowed, looking at the mice hanging from Fireheart's mouth. He nodded and dropped them on the ground. Thanks. Now that you're here, why don't you see if you can persuade this kid to take his medicine? She padded over to the mice, moving stiffly from her old shoulder injury, and began to gnaw on one hungrily. Fireheart approached the kid. It looked up at him, opening its tiny mouth in a rasping, painful cough. There's going to be an ad in a minute and a half. So please turn down your volume if you have not already. Thank you. Fireheart gently pushed a small green herb towards it. If you want to be a warrior, you'll have to get used to swallowing these horrible things, he mewed. When you make your trip to Moonstone, you have to eat herbs worse than this. Kit looked wonderingly at him. Think of it as practice, Fireheart urged. Practice for when you become a warrior. Kit reached forwards and took a tentative mouthful. Fireheart gave it an encouraging purr. Yellowfang appeared at his side. Well done, she meowed. She gestured with her nose, and Fireheart understood she wanted to talk to him. He followed her to the shelter of the tall rock where she slept. The rain was still falling, and Yellowfang's matted gray fur was soaked. Her her sodden tail dragging in the dirt. Bluestar has white cough, she meowed gravely. But white cough isn't that serious, right? Yellowfang shook her head. It came on very quickly, she meowed, and it's affected her badly. Pieheart's stomach tightened as he remembered the dwindling number of lives left to the clan leader. I warned her to stay away from the other sick cats, but she wanted to see them. Yellowfang went on. She's sleeping in her den at the moment. Frostfur is with her. The fear in Yellowfang's eyes made Fireheart wonder if she knew the truth about Bluestar's lives. Fireheart had assumed he was the only cat in the camp whom Bluestar had shared her secret with. The rest of the clan thought she had 3 lives left, but perhaps a medicine cat could sense these things instinctively. The truth was, if Bluestar lost this life, she'd only have 1 more left. That is the end of chapter 15. And that is also going to be the last chapter for this stream. So I'm going to go ahead and try to look for someone to raid. Let's see if we can find anyone. Perhaps there's some people that are doing something relatively similar. Let's see. Can we find anyone at all doing something similar? There's some interesting ASMR ones, that's for sure. Let's try to find a chill. Oh. There's one I haven't seen in a while. How about we do Coach Sinju? I haven't raided out to there in a while. So, thank you guys for coming by today. That was chapter 11 through 15. The next 5 chapters will be next Friday. If you do not know which book series this is the Warrior Cat series book. The first one is called Into the Wild, and the second one is called Fire and Ice. We are currently on the second book of the series. And it seems like we're getting into more of the seriousness of the book, so we are probably going to see some possible deaths in the next 5 chapters.